Thank you so much for watching my channel. As you can see by the title of this video, we're going to be talking about COVID and pregnancy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump right on in, y'all. So this is going to be a detailed video of my experience being in the hospital, pregnant with COVID. I am not trying to bash anyone or say anything that's negative in regards to what healthcare system you decide to get your care from, but I am going to share my story. So let's just dive right on in. Okay, so I was diagnosed with COVID May 22nd to be exact, and I was about 28 weeks pregnant with my third child. And I would say my symptoms, we could start with symptoms. I did take some notes here because I wanted to make sure I covered everything because, you know, I can talk a lot. I can just get all off track. So, like I said, I was in the hospital when I originally went to the ER. So it's a little bit different when you're pregnant and you decide that you need care, like health care or medical attention. Once I entered into the ER, it was very overwhelming. I did feel weird. I did have a fever. My fever was about 101, you know, not super high, but you know, being pregnant, you know, your body temperature can't be, you know, above a certain level or else it may affect the fetus or the baby. So I decided to go ahead and check it out because my first symptom was a stuffy nose. And typically, like when you're pregnant, you have a stuffy nose anyway. So I just was like, okay, you know, maybe it's just because I'm pregnant and my nose is being really stuffy. So about the second day of my nose being stuffy, I noticed that I was having diarrhea as well, TMI. And I was like, well, during my pregnancy, I was super constipated. So when I developed diarrhea, I was like, okay. And I was thinking in the back of my head, well, maybe I should go seek medical attention. So about a few hours after the diarrhea, that's when my fever started. And that's when I said, okay. Okay, so once I walked into the emergency room, I did feel a little weird because it was a very emotional day for me. This would be day 20, May 24th. So once I got to the emergency room and I talked to them and I told them my symptoms that I was having, I basically said, well, you know, I'm having symptoms like I, you know, got COVID. And they looked at me and they was like, okay, ma'am, are you sure you have COVID symptoms? And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, I have a fever, you know, I have diarrhea, I have a stuffy nose, you know, and you guys, I don't have sinus. So when I started having symptoms, like I was having sinuses, I was like, something's not right. I've never had a sinus day in my life. So the nurse that was on call for the ER, she asked me, she said, are you pregnant? I said, yes, I'm pregnant. She said, okay, well, you know, since it's COVID, we're not going to put you in the general population of the emergency room. We're going to send you up to L&D, which is labor and delivery. But before they did that, they have to, you know, call up there to see if there's any available space, any triage rooms available. So what was said was, well, if she's having, you know, basically the triage nurse from labor and delivery said, well, if she's having COVID symptoms, she doesn't need to be on, you know, in the birthing ward, basically, because if she is infected, she could potentially infect everybody up here. And so about 10 minutes passed and they're trying to debate whether I should, you know, stay in general population with the emergency room people or go up to labor and delivery. So I kind of was just like feeling really bad. I typically don't take any medication before I go to the emergency room because I feel like, you know, being a woman of color, you know, it's harder for you to get what you are coming there for if you don't have any symptoms, if that makes sense. That's not a whole video. We can talk about that in later time. So I went in, they checked my temperature, they saw I had a fever, and so they immediately did a COVID swab or a COVID test on me. And typically, that takes anywhere from, I was told, a few hours to a couple of days. But because I was also having other symptoms like sore throat, my nose was stuffy, they thought it could have been strep throat. So what they did was they swabbed me for strep throat as well. At this point, labor and delivery did decide to bring me up to, the birthing ward. And that's where I was initially, I guess, triaged it. And the nurse comes in, she walks in. Yeah, I talk with my hands, so it's hard for me to sit here and not use my hands. So she comes in and I can see her. And when I say I can see her, I can see her face, I can see her body, I can see her scrubs, I can see her name tag, I can see who this lady is, right? So after she do the test, and another lady came in to assist her to do the swabbing or whatever, they put the swabs in the little thing and they walks out. Everything's fine. Mind you, I'm in a room with an air scrubber. And for those of you who don't know what an air scrubber is, it basically cleans the air like a giant humidifier or a giant air purifier to get all the germs and dirt out of it. So at this point, y'all, my temperature is just rising and rising and rising, and I'm starting to feel really bad. Like, I'm starting to feel really bad to the point where I'm like, okay, I need some medication. I'm already 28 weeks pregnant, and I'm having really bad chills and body aches. Things are just progressing really fast for me. So I rang the nurse's bell and say, hey, have you got my results back? Have you got my results back from my test? Can, you tell me what they are? If so, if not, can you at least come in here and bring me some Tylenol to kill this fever? So she comes back in, she checks my temperature. Still, I can see her. Mind you, I can see this woman. And she comes in, she does have her standard, mask on or whatever, but everything else is just, relaxed or, a relaxed feel. And about another hour into it, I'm still sitting there. My temperature is still rising. She takes my temperature again for the third time, and it's still high. I can't remember what those exact numbers are, but it still was high. So, after that or whatever, I called up to the nurse's station again because I'm like, look, something got to give. Like, I feel terrible. And then I immediately start to cry. I start crying, because I just felt like my voice wasn't being heard. I just felt like they weren't moving quick enough for me. I actually went into the ER at about 6 p.m. and I did not get admitted until 1 a.m. the next day. So that's neither here nor there. Okay. That's farther on into the story. We're going to come back to me being in triage in labor and delivery. So the lady walks back in about another 2 hours later. She said, well, we did get your strep throat test back and that was negative. So, right now we're just waiting for your COVID to come back. I said, well, can I go? At this point, I'm ready to go because I felt like no one was listening to me and my fever is still sky high and I need to leave so I can take some medicine so I can feel better. And she said, well, ma'am, we don't recommend that you leave because we still haven't got your COVID test back yet. And I said, okay, well, can you bring me some Tylenol? Like, I feel bad. I'm crying. I'm pregnant. And I feel like y'all are treating me like dirt. So she said, okay, I'm trying to get them to rush your COVID test to see, Okay. So another hour and a half go by. So mind you, this is like 6-7 hours into the stay already. So another hour and a half go by, and she knocks on my door, and I said, yes. She said, I'm finna come into your room. I have your test results. I said, okay. She walks in, y'all. Kid you not. I could not see her. And when I said I couldn't see her, she had on 2 masks, a face shield, a head covering over her head. She had on this long, like, gown thing. Looked like she was about to do a science experiment, right? So that automatically clicked in my head, like, okay, so I have COVID. Like, I'm at this point I'm smiling because, this is kind of funny how she treated me an hour ago versus how she's treating me now. Now that she has learned of my test results. And I get it. This is not to, I get it. She needs to be safe so she can continue to care for the rest of the people in the world. I definitely understand that. However, her talk with me was super brief. She came in, she said, so you did test positive for COVID, but what I suggest that you do is go home now. She said, I want you to go home, take plenty of vitamins, make sure you drink plenty of fluids, and you can take over-the-counter Tylenol for your fever. Now, and she literally was like asking me to get my clothes on, packing my stuff up so I can basically go or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to like wrap my head around my diagnosis, and I'm trying to ask questions like, so what does this mean? Because I'm pregnant. Is there any type of special, precautions I should take as far as me being pregnant and having COVID? Should I be concerned? Like, I had 1,001 questions, and she just couldn't really give me any answers. Now, granted, nobody has any answers. I understand that. I understand that this is a new virus. Studies haven't really been, studied yet. Things haven't really, unfolded yet. So I said, okay, and when I got to labor and delivery, somebody wheeled me up there in a wheelchair because, that's just, it's far from the emergency room and I'm pregnant. Why should I be walking and I got a fever, blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, well, can I get a wheelchair to leave? And she said, oh, no, ma'am, we can't. No. She said, no, we can't have that exposure, basically trying to nicely say hell no because you're sick and you're not going to infect nobody else. Okay. I said, okay, okay. But I still felt horrible. Mind you, she still did not give me any medication. She told me that I could take Tylenol. And I said, well, can you at least give me some damn Tylenol so I can feel better on this long ass walk back to my car? And, she basically said no. Well, we don't have anything right now. Or, she was kind of like beating around the bush trying to get out my room as fast as she could. Okay, so in the middle, she said, okay, I want you to stay in your bed. Do not move until I leave out the room. So I said, okay. I didn't know what that meant. So I said, okay. And then I proceeds, after I get all myself together, I proceed to walk down out of the birthing ward, right? So as I'm walking, she runs up and say, oh, don't forget your little inhaler thing, the thing that you blow into to make sure that you don't develop pneumonia. I don't know what it's called, y'all. Respirator, exacerbator. I don't know what it's called. And I was like, she would have let me leave without even giving that to me. I felt like she went back to triage and somebody said, don't forget to get this to her. I think it was her nerves. She was scared. We're all human. I understand that. So this was May the 22nd, right? 2 days later, I returned back to the emergency room with double pneumonia in both lungs. Okay. Now, she told me to blow into the thing. I did it as hard as I could. I made sure that I took all the precautions and took extra vitamins because I was pregnant with COVID, right? So 2 days later, just 48 hours after being diagnosed, it turns for the worst. Okay. It turns for the worst. And I 100% could not breathe. I could not breathe. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even think. I couldn't eat. I don't know if you've ever tried to hold your, nose and eat food at the same time. You can't do that. You got to pick and choose whether you want to breathe or eat this food. So I was not eating. I was not drinking anything. Mind you, I'm 28 weeks pregnant. So whatever I decide that I need for my child to survive, that child is going to take from my nutrients from my body. Okay. So as I'm admitted, I'm sitting there, I'm laying there, the ER doctor comes in, he talks to me, he says, look, we are here to save your life. Basically letting me know that he's going to do everything he can to save my life. Okay, mind you, I'm pregnant. So he goes to say, if you were to start to crash or things take, a turn for the worse, we're going to do everything that we can to save your life, because you can always have another child. And he came in with paperwork and making sure I signed everything, stating that, I do give him permission to save my life, in the event something were to happen to me. So basically he wasn't going to save my unborn child's life, my son's life. He just was going to save my life. Okay. All right. Okay. We don't know what this virus is going to do. So I get it. I understand. Right. So then he calls my OBGYN. So he calls my OB, and my OB was like, she don't need to be in this hospital. She don't need to stay. It's not, her COVID is not to the point where she needs to be admitted, right? And I said, if I have my emergency room doctor was telling me immediately, because you cannot breathe, because you're having severe symptoms, because you have double pneumonia, you will be admitted to the hospital, but he wanted to run it past my OBGYN and let my OBGYN know that I was in the hospital. Should something happen to the baby, he should be, on alert, basically. So I'm thinking in my head, like, okay, I done called and made arrangements for my other 2 children to be taken care of. I'm getting this wrapped around my head. I'm gonna be in the hospital for a couple of days. Okay, I'm already planning my meals. Like, yeah, girl is happy, right? So then my OB comes. I guess my OB was already at the hospital at the time, so he comes downstairs and to the emergency room and say, Miss Howie, this is what he said to me, and I quote, "We're not in the business of giving complimentary overnight stays in the hospital. I don't think you need to be, hospitalized because you have COVID. Everybody has COVID in here, okay? And we're not just going to be giving up a free bed or a free night to anyone who wants to have one, right?" I'm like, when you're hit with that much basically bullshit, you don't even know how to, I didn't even know how to react. So I was like, okay, let me speak to patient advocate or patient, whoever that person is that comes in to, advocate on the patient's behalf, right? So when I said that, everybody started running and scrambling and, what do you need, Miss Howie? Is there anything that I can do for you? The nurses came in and, my OB was called again, and the emergency room doctor was trying to figure out, was I calling about him? And I talked to him and I told him, I said, no. I said, I really 100% appreciate what you're doing for me today. I said, however, my OB does not feel that I am sick enough to stay. Mind you, I have double pneumonia in both of my lungs, and I have COVID, and I'm 28 weeks pregnant. So why are you telling me I shouldn't be admitted to the hospital, right? Okay, I already have a compromised immune system anyway. So I said, okay, since you want to be an asshole, I said, okay, well, I'm just going to call somebody down here to speak on my behalf, since you obviously don't understand what I'm saying. And I'm thinking this. I didn't even get into it at that moment with my OB because I can't breathe. So I can't even talk anyway. So there's no way that I was going to just blank on this man or try to do anything or try to make the situation more worse than what it already is. So a couple hours go past, and I'm really trying to contemplate, am I really leaving? Because I know in my heart, I cannot breathe. It took everything out of me just to get up on the bed. Okay. My heart rate was 137 sitting still. I'm like, sitting still. Okay. Not even moving, and I knew I was dehydrated. I hadn't eaten in a couple of days. I wasn't drinking anything because I was just basically concerned about not being able to breathe. When you can't breathe, everything goes out of your mind. You're trying to figure out okay, how can I breathe again? So they hooked me up to all these heart monitors and everything, because at this point my heart rate was racing so fast because I wasn't able to take in enough oxygen. And I started having, heart flutters, heart palpitations, or whatever you want to call them. My heart starts skipping beats, right? So that's when I originally got admitted, because they were, looking at my EKG machine, and they were saying like, okay, there's a lot of stress on your body right now because I have COVID and I'm pregnant. Like, who wouldn't keep a pregnant person in the hospital that has COVID? So, okay, long story, y'all, I do have my nose pierced. So if you see like, that's what that is, okay? And this is going to be, I'm going to have to make this video 2 parts because there's no way that I can tell you my whole experience in one video. So as they looking at my EKG and they, decided to admit me, they decide that I don't need to be on labor and delivery. That's my OBGYN. He stated that, he meant that, and that's what happened. So they end up taking me up to the COVID ward, right? Beautiful. I mean, beautiful hallway, nice people. I mean, this was the best experience I've ever had in a hospital as far as the level of care, okay? Everyone that cared for me were all male. And I'm assuming because, with Corona, most of the doctors or the, first responders were not able to be in the home during that particular high moment, and still is today. So it was basically a male-dominant floor, right? Walk onto the floor, we had to be let in. There is no badge swiping to get in. You can't hit the button to open up the door. Somebody had to let you. Somebody has to let you in. You have to have like basically an invitation to get onto the COVID hall. As I'm approaching, my bed is approaching to my COVID room, I noticed that everything was dark and quiet. Okay. Now it still was beautiful. I mean, the ambiance is really nice. Go into the room and there's like this up on my ceiling. There's like signs that say, press if you need help. Do not get out the bed. Don't get up. I even had an alarm on my bed. If I tried to get up, it would. Thank you so much for watching. This will be a 2-part video. Make sure you turn your notifications on so you know when I upload the second part of the video. If you have any comments, questions, please comment down below. And I look forward to seeing y'all in the next video. Thank you for watching. This is How We Family. Bye-bye.